Hello, welcome to season 1, episode 4 of my podcast. My name is Liza Whitehurst, and I am a student at Westminster College studying strategic communication. I graduate with my master's degree in a week now, and I'm passionate about all things org health, leadership health, you name it, workplace culture, all the things. I could not be more excited about today's podcast. If you know me, you know I'm a bit of a Patrick Lencioni fangirl. And today, it's not Patrick Lencioni. Sorry to let you guys down, but it's just as great. Today on the podcast, we have Casey Thompson. He is a principal consultant at the Table Group, which is a Patrick Lencioni company. So welcome, Casey. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. And it's rare to find people who are as passionate about org health as you are. So I'm happy to be here and talk through the work that we do.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So Casey is a Utah native. He's an avid outdoorsman. Is there anything else you want to say to introduce yourself?
Twin brother. My brother's on the actual Table Group podcast. His name's Casey Thompson. He and Pat work pretty closely together at the Table Group. And other than that, I don't know if there's some other interesting stuff that we could go through, but it might be best to focus on org health.
All right, sounds great. So your title at the Table Group is principal consultant, but what exactly does that mean? What do you do for the Table Group?
Yeah, so the Table Group is comprised, it's a pretty small company actually. People think it's a lot larger than it is. It's comprised of 11 people that are at the home office outside of San Francisco and Lafayette. And then there are 40 principal consultants, people like me throughout the world, that go and meet with executive teams and teach them the disciplines of organizational health in order to make employees more engaged and less miserable, and help leadership teams make better decisions faster. And so I'm the only one in Salt Lake, which is why you reached out to me maybe. But there are 40 people who are really doing good work and fit like a really strong profile of hungry, humble, smart, which is our values at the Table Group, who are doing this work all over.
That's awesome. So quick 30 seconds to 1 minute. How did you end up at the Table Group? I know this is a long path, but quick version.
Yeah, so you mentioned I'm a big outdoorsman. I used to make product for the North Face. I worked in mountain athletics, which is like the running, training, climbing portion of the North Face, and really cut my teeth there professionally, and really loved the outdoor environment. Ended up starting my own company with my brother, also making apparel, and then learned a lot through that process. At the same time, my brother started working for the Table Group. And then I went out on my own as a strategic consultant, consulting specifically to outdoor brands. And I had clients in Indonesia, Switzerland, and the US. And I would inevitably be talking to my brother and telling him about a project or a team I'm working with and trying to implement something. And I knew the strategy innately was correct because that's kind of my background. I understand product lifecycle, I understand product development or go-to-market strategies. And I'd be telling my brother kind of the issues that I was facing, and he'd be like, "Hey, have you read Pat's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team?" And I would go, "Look, Cody." So my brother's name's Cody. "Look, Cody, I don't do the soft stuff. You guys do the soft part of consulting, the team building, the rah, 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 the holding hands. I do the strategy." And he was like, "Well, I think you'd be kind of surprised." And so I started reading Pat's books, and I had the opportunity, I started implementing those models with the teams I was working with. And it wasn't the strategy that was wrong, it was actually the team, and just the cohesion on the team and the clarity for the team of where they were going. And so I fell in love with the work, started using Pat's stuff in my own practice, and then had the opportunity to meet with Pat. And we talked a lot about what I wanted to do next, and he offered me a job at the Table Group. And I can confidently say it'll be the last job I ever have. I love what I do, and I love helping teams. And I'm here specifically to make Salt Lake City known for better leaders, healthier organizations, and more engaged employees. And that's why you and I are connected.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is so great. I think it's funny to hear you say that, that's the soft stuff. I'm not interested in that. When today, even talking with you today, you're like, everyone focuses on the smart, the strategic, this, the, this side, but we need to focus on the soft stuff, the holding hand side. So it's funny that you had kind of like a come to Jesus moment about, wait, what's actually, kind of determines health of an organization. So that's cool.
Yeah. And honestly, I believe in results. I still love to see teams succeed. And I've seen the path of, you can do that on the smart side. And we're going to talk through what, organizational health consulting looks like and why it's important for teams. But I do this in service of results. I don't do this so people are better friends at work. I do it so that organizations can crush and get a better ROI on their investment of time, money, and energy.
That's awesome. So what kind of clients do you work with? Is it a specific niche, or is it clients from all over the spectrum, all kinds of organizations?
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about this work as opposed to strategic consulting in the outdoor space, is that this work applies to any organization. Doesn't matter how big or how small. I work with nonprofits that are, a leadership team of 4 or 5, all the way up to Fortune 5 companies that are international global monsters. And the beauty of it is, if people really invest in the work, I really believe the discipline around the work is where you see the results. And we see that in nonprofits and churches as much as we see that in Fortune 500 companies. And that's why leaving an outdoor industry that I loved and something specific to something that was close to my heart just meant that I could serve more people and serve more industries and make more organizations healthy. And so that's kind of why I made the leap.
Cool. That's awesome. So any given week, what does a week in the life of Casey look like?
Well, it's a good question. I think that it kind of depends on if I'm feeling motivated for work or motivated for adventure. This month has been a lot of serving clients, and I kind of went in like knowing that this is going to be a big month for travel and serving teams all the way from Florida to Santa Barbara, and I think that type of lifestyle fuels the adventure side. But then there's also kind of a time where, when we met last before the podcast, since then I've gone to Baja, Mexico twice just to be totally off the grid and do some camping and fishing and surfing. So I would say that it's focused on 2 things. Like, I really, really believe in this work. And so investing in my community is one of the lenses I use to make decisions. And then does it draw me closer to adventure? And I think one kind of makes it harder for the other one to coexist at the same time. But both of them fuel me, they energize me. And I think that that's where I try to keep that balance, because I need both to function at my highest level. And so this week has been super busy, and I'm happy to be here with you. But headed to Palm Springs to meet my brother Cody on Thursday. So a lot of freedom, a lot of fun, but a lot of focus on helping teams.
Yeah, I love that you need both to be your absolute best and like your absolute happiest. I think that's great. Quick tangent. I just have to know, what was your best catch in Mexico fishing?
I would say when we caught a lot. We actually went diving, free diving, and we pulled out some rock scallops, and those were probably the tastiest of the seafood that we pulled from that ocean. But yeah, I enjoy all variations of seafood, but scallops might be at the top of the list.
That's amazing. I think if I had another podcast ever in this lifetime, it would be all about seafood.
Yeah.
Kind of a seafood foodie, a bit of a junkie.
I'll join that one. I'll join that one too. So
okay, great. Yeah, that's awesome. But the real reason why we're here, unfortunately, is not about seafood, but it is about org health. And so today we're going to talk about the 4 disciplines of org health. And if you are watching the video or on YouTube, you see Casey has this wonderful prop behind him where he has beautifully outlined and drawn a very nice visual for us on the 4 disciplines of org health.
Yeah, when I was drawing it, I told you that if I would have known that my job was going to be drawing shapes and writing in front of people, I probably would have focused more when I was in my handwriting classes. But unfortunately, this is what it looks like. It's not as beautiful as described, but I do believe in the power behind it. So I'd love to walk you through kind of our process and what we think, what we know actually helps teams when it comes to organizational health.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think almost a fun approach to this could be pretend we're in like an initial consulting meeting. So
Yeah.
just talk to me like I have not heard of some of these terms before, even though I know the terms.
So I would probably have to first describe how organizational health is not consulting with health organizations,
Okay.
because that's one of the first barriers to overcome is that people don't know what that word means yet, and that is even further proof that I believe Patrick was ahead of his time. This is something that is going to be at the forefront of companies and what people are looking for to join organizations, and Pat has been on this soapbox for a long time. So once we overcome the idea of what organizational health is, and we'll get into what that looks like, there are generally three biases that we have to overcome when it comes to leaders. One is the adrenaline bias, and that is that, hey, this work takes time. And most leaders love fighting fires. And so they go from one fire to the next and they feel super accomplished. But we like to say that, if you're only in a reactive state as a leader, then it's really hard to make sure that the trajectory of your strategy is going to align with like whatever your North Star is. So there's an adrenaline bias. Then there's a sophistication bias. You see a guy like me drawing a bunch of circles and triangles up on a board, you might go, you know what, this is a little too simple for me. We're going to just stick to some of the strategy. And then the other is like a time and kind of cost barrier. Like, what is the ROI for my time and investment? And unfortunately, this is one that like you only see when you do the work. Is we have teams that attribute massive growth in revenue because they're willing to put in the work. And so that would be my approach to you as we start the conversation: is put all those biases aside and just hear us out. And so I would ask you then, hey, what do you think it takes to be a successful organization?
Well, I'll answer like somebody who isn't interested in org health. Um, good sales, good results, maybe really long tenured employees. Yeah, I would say if we're making a lot of money, then we're probably doing a good job.
Yeah, and that's absolutely a measurement of success in a lot of ways, right? Is we believe that there are two elements that really make a team successful. The first side is what you're describing, and that's the smart side of the equation. Things like finance, technology, marketing, product, whatever the case may be, something you went to school for, probably something you learned at a previous job that you're bringing into a new organization, and those are things that are absolutely necessary to be successful as an organization. But they're also things that really leaders spend the majority of their time focusing on, right? So there's this idea that leaders, like when there's a problem, will oftentimes just focus on the smart side of the equation. If there's a problem in their product department, they're like, oh, we need to bring someone in, or we need to bring a consultant in, a strategy consultant maybe, or we need to replace that person in order to achieve the success that we want. And so leaders are conditioned, and oftentimes, Pat describes it as "I Love Lucy" episode, where which obviously you and I have never seen because we're younger than Pat. But he describes this episode of "I Love Lucy" where he says there's an episode where Ricky comes home and Lucy's looking for her earrings, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I lost my earrings." And he says, "Well, did you lose them out here in the living room?" And she says, "No, I lost them in the bedroom, but the lighting is better out here." And the whole idea is leaders do this all the time. There's a real problem being faced by them, which we think is on the healthy side, and they go back to the side that they know in order to try to correct it. And so we absolutely believe that leaders and teams need to have the smart side of the equation in order to be successful. But we would say that's only part of it. And so the healthy side of the equation, the other element of success for companies is companies that are healthy have minimal amounts of politics. So if I ask you, and not in this current climate about politics, but if I ask you what do politics look like on a team, what would you say?
Oh gosh. I would say employees not getting along, leadership maybe being biased, lots of fighting, arguments.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a hallmark of politics on a team. We describe, especially as an executive leadership team, we describe politics as changing what you say based on who's in the room, right?
Mm.
Have you ever had a conversation with someone, go into a meeting, and then they say something totally different?
Yeah.
Changing what you say based on who's in the room. We also talk about politics. A hallmark of politics is um, uh, having a meeting after a meeting. You know,
Mhm.
where you sit in a meeting and everybody nods and they clap for the PowerPoint. And then as soon as the meeting's over, I follow you into your office and I say, hey, what was that all about? That's not the direction we need to be going. But
Right.
nobody speaks up. Or withholding information until you think it's the right time, right? That's a real problem when it comes to advocating for yourself or your department over the collective results of the organization. So that's politics.
Mhm.
And that's the first sign of a healthy team is minimal amounts of politics. We'll never eliminate it, but we can reduce it.
Mhm.
The second is minimal amounts of confusion. So
Mhm.
my question would be, have you ever been in a meeting and maybe it took an hour, 2 hours, and then you get done with the meeting and you're like, what did we just decide? What
Oh,
did we just
absolutely.
discuss? That it's confusion reigns in unhealthy organizations, and I think that that's something that you and I can both relate to at previous jobs. Hopefully, not the one you're at right now, but previous jobs. Um, so, with minimal politics and minimal confusion, generally on healthy teams, we find a high sense of morale. Um, Teams that know what they're doing, there's not a political agenda. They're really clear on like, what is our goal? How do I fit into our goal? They're generally pretty stoked to go to work. You know,
Mhm.
the example that I use all the time is Chick-fil-A. You know, I love to golf. We share this passion for golf, and and oftentimes I'll be driving to the course. Maybe it's a Friday. Drive through Chick-fil-A. You know, drive through. I get a chicken sandwich, and I'll say, "Hey man, have a great day." And he goes, "Oh, I will. You too." And I'm like, "Is this guy having a better day than me? Like he's at work, and I'm driving to the golf course." And generally, those teams are more productive.
Mhm.
Um, and when you have a more productive team, you generally, with high morale, high productivity, low politics, low confusion, you generally have low turnover of good people. And when we talk about good people, it's not the people who are like just crushing it in sales or crushing it like as far as getting work done. Those are the people who fit your culture. They understand your goals. They contribute in a positive way. And what happens is we tell that to leaders, hey, minimal politics, minimal confusions, high morale, high productivity, low turnover. And every leader goes, oh yeah, I want that. But they don't know how, right?
Mhm.
And so we would say if you can focus and understand how to do that, it will maximize everything you do on the smart side of the equation. If you can focus and really get your team rowing in the same direction around common goals, it's going to maximize everything you do when it comes to finance or technology or product or whatever the case may be. So we believe, and Pat would say this, and he writes it in his book, The Advantages. Organizational health is the last sustainable competitive advantage in business because everything else we can outsource. We can bring people in.
Right. Yeah.
So the natural next question, right, is what is it?
So how do
How,
I start?
how do I become a healthy organization?
Yeah.
Great question. We equate organizational health to physical health, right? It's the same. It's discipline, but it's discipline around three things. What are the three things that you need to be physically healthy?
Good diet, good
Diet,
exercise, good sleep.
absolutely. Three things. They're super simple, right? But do we do them all the time? No, we don't.
Nope.
And oftentimes when we can do two of them, we don't do the third, or sometimes we just throw all three out the window. And so we think of it in the same realm of organizational health is there are four simple disciplines that if you can master as a leader, as an executive team, you will become a healthy organization.
Mhm.
And that's the beautiful circle I have behind me. Um, yeah, thank you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, the first discipline of organizational health is build a cohesive team. And we would say that most teams don't understand that choosing to be a team is a choice. Most people work in an organization for 15 years, they get promoted to an executive team. They see it as I'm here because I earned this, or I'm here because this is a reward. we see it as a responsibility. And when it becomes a responsibility, you can look at those around you at the table and say, we have to choose to become a team. And we talk about that in terms of behavioral alignment. Behavioral alignment is around the 5 dysfunctions of a team, which is Pat's best-selling book. Exactly, you have it right there. It's been on the best-selling list for business books on New York Times, I think for 900 weeks or something in a row. So it's a pretty good book, but it's really rooted in this behavioral alignment, like discipline 1, how do we build a cohesive team? The first element of building a cohesive team is trust. So when I ask you, what does trust look like? What would you say? What does trust look like on a team?
I would say believing that your teammates have your best interest in mind.
Yeah, that's good. And we would say that is one element of trust. We would call that predictive trust, right?
Okay.
I can predict, because we know each other for so long, or I know how good you are at your job. I can predict that you're going to show up on time, you're going to be reliable, you're going to execute on your deliverables, and that takes a long time to build. Predictable based trust takes a long time to build. What we're talking about on a team is vulnerability based trust, and that's being able to say as a leader, hey, I'm sorry, I don't understand that, can you say it again? Or I'm sorry, I was wrong. Or you're better at this, can you help me with this? And oftentimes leaders have so much of a guard, so much armor on, that they're not able to do that. And so it starts foundationally with trust at the bottom of the pyramid, because in order, if we don't have trust, we can't enter into conflict. And conflict, I know, is a scary word, especially now. Everyone's like, ooh, can you make it consensus? And a lot of teams we work with are like, conflict is scary, can we do consensus? And we would say consensus is corporate mumbo jumbo. Like, yeah. we don't need to agree to disagree. Basically what you're saying is, I agree that we disagree, and when I leave the room, we are not aligned. That's what you're saying. And so what we would say is, conflict without trust is politics, right? It's a political agenda. Conflict with trust is ideological debate. We're just trying to, what's the best possible answer that we can come up with to move our organization forward? And so we believe that teams need conflict, and we help teams determine what is healthy conflict. You know, I told you earlier, I have a twin brother, and you have siblings, right?
Yes, I have a brother.
You have a brother? How is he, older or younger?
A lot older, 11 years older.
So I have a twin brother and you have a brother. My idea of conflict, I could yell at, like with my brother, argue with my brother all day, and it would not emotionally drain me. But that may not be the case for you. And so we help develop conflict norms or team norms in order to understand, like, hey, what should conflict look like on this team? And we need conflict in order to get commitment, which is the next layer of the 5 dysfunctions, or the 5 behaviors of a healthy team. And when we have conflict, we're able to get commitment because people can weigh in order to buy in. If people don't weigh in, there is no conflict, there is no friction, then they're usually not bought into the decision that was made. And so I think that is oftentimes overlooked because we have different personalities. Some people are introverted and they don't speak unless spoken, like unless asked. Some people are extroverted and all they do is speak, like me right now on your podcast. And when we understand each other better, we can let everyone weigh in order to get their buy-in. And one of the best examples of this is back when I used to work at the North Face. It was kind of the heyday of the North Face, like back when we had, we were the leader in the industry, and we had rock stars from like all these other companies like Patagonia and Mountain Hardwear and Marmot, and we had done a product release, and I don't know if I can even share. We'd done a product release that didn't go as well as we thought it would go, and everyone was arguing around a table. And Todd Spoleto, who is one of the best leaders I've ever worked for, at the time he was the CEO of the North Face and has since moved on. But he heard everyone. He asked for their input. He mined for conflict to allow everyone to say their piece. And marketing had one idea, product had another idea, and he ended up in the conversation saying, "Okay, I've heard enough. I've heard everyone's side of the story, but here's my decision. He's the leader. He needs to make a decision. Here's my decision. He went around the room and he said, can you support my decision? Can you support my decision? Can you support my decision? He didn't say, do you agree with my decision? And the beauty of this is when you leave the room, you have to be aligned as a leadership team. And when you have that alignment, that support, not necessarily agreement, then you can hold each other accountable. If we don't have alignment, we can't hold each other accountable. And accountability is the next behavior. And so accountability, like, what do you think accountability looks like?
I would say accountability is holding people to an agreed standard.
Yeah, I think that's a good definition. Accountability is
Mutually
oftentimes,
agreed standard.
yeah, accountability is oftentimes one of the hardest one for adults. Do you know why?
Fear of conflict.
Fear of conflict, but also it turns out that adults don't like to tell other adults, hey, remember that thing you said you would do? You're not doing it, right? Like we're adults here. And so we avoid accountability. But when we talk about this, it's about behavioral accountability. Hey, we were aligned in that room. We need everyone rowing in the right direction. If you're not aligned with this, we should have had the conflict around it, right?
Yeah.
And so and the reason we even hold each other accountable as an act of service to one another is because we need to be focused on collective results. And that's the top of the triangle, which is when you talk about like, oh yeah, you don't want to do the hand holding stuff, you don't want to do the soft stuff. I don't, but I believe in behavioral alignment in order to achieve collective results. And I believe that this is the process by which you can do that. So the first is the 5 dysfunctions or the 5 behaviors of a team, becoming behaviorally aligned. And you've read the book, right?
Yes.
And what stood out to you about that team?
I think I was just amazed at how much they talked about each other behind everyone's back.
Were you amazed, but you also were like, I've seen this before?
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. It was kind of like, it was really easy for me to kind of equate some of those situations to real world experiences that I had walked through. Like, oh, this is so real.
Yeah. And that's why Pat writes his books in fables. It's a story, right? And the reason he writes it in stories is because there's a bunch of business theory out there. But when you write it in a story, it's like, oh yeah, I've seen this. I've seen a lack of trust on a team. I know what that looks like. I've seen a lack of accountability on a team. I know what that looks like. So building a cohesive team is the first step. And we have exercises around building trust and having healthy conflict and what it looks like to drive for commitment, accountability, and results. But then the next step after we've done that is discipline 2, which is creating clarity. And we talk about creating clarity as it pertains to 6 critical questions. We believe that if every team could be totally aligned on 6 simple questions, that they would have and be able to cascade that throughout the organization, they would have wild success and everyone would really know kind of what they were about and how they fit in. And so the questions are, why do we exist? This is aspirational, right? Like, what beyond making money, why do we exist? How do we behave? What do we do? Like a simple business definition. How will we succeed? Like, what are 3 or 4 levers or like anchors in which we can make decisions that will allow us to succeed as an organization? And if we communicated to, from the top down, that everyone would be able to use in order to make the same decision that the CEO would make. So how will we succeed? That's number 4. What's most important right now, which is beyond our 3 5-year strategic plan. What can we rally around right now in order to accomplish? And in a shorter period of time, 3, 6, 9 months. And then the last question is, who does what? And they seem very simple, but I can promise you, I've sat around some of the most sophisticated executive teams that I've worked with, not in the world maybe, but that I've worked with, and they don't have those answers. They can't collectively come to terms with those answers together.
They think they have them.
Of course, everyone has a mission, vision, values, but usually it's outsourced. Usually it's printed on the wall. No one's living it. And so you've read Pat's Ideal Team Player, right?
Yes.
And
Some of it.
what are the values that our company are founded on? The behavior.
Yes. Hungry, humble, and smart.
And can you describe what those mean?
Hungry for growth and success. Humble, as in, just an all around team player, just that kind of person you want in your office. Smart, emotionally intelligent, correct?
Yep. Yeah. And you nailed it. You get I'll send you another signed copy of Pat's book. Yeah. But yeah, it's really, when you go into our company, if you met with any consultant and had them on your podcast, I would hope that those were the three things that you took away. Oh, this guy, he's hungry. He wants to collectively change Utah and to be known like that. I know that's probably not going to happen, but that's kind of my goal.
It could. I believe it.
Humility, like Pat always describes it as the way that I believe, I don't want to misquote because he always quotes people. I can't remember who it was right now. I think it's C.S. Lewis, but it's like not thinking less of yourself, but thinking about yourself less.
Yeah.
But
I think that's a Lewis quote.
Is it? Nailed it. So. And then emotional intelligence is just understanding how what you say and do can affect other people. And that seems very simple, but it's honestly a behavior that you have to be aware of in an organization that does consulting for executive teams. So we've done build a team, build a cohesive team. That's behavioral alignment. We've talked about creating clarity, which is intellectual alignment. And the third discipline is over communicating clarity. And this one is the hardest one for leaders. Why do you think that?
Maybe because they don't think they need to remind people of things. If they've said it once, maybe they think that's enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Leaders are saying, why should I have to over communicate something? I said it, I'm the leader, it should be done. But the best leaders that we know, like Gary Kelly of Southwest Airlines, who does this really well, he changed his name from CEO to CRO, and he calls himself the Chief Reminding Officer. And we know from data, how many times does it take for someone to hear something for it really to set in? How many times?
7.
7 times. That's over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I think I held up 8 the first time. So, but why not just do it one more time?
Yeah.
And we talk about what ends up happening, especially with good team members, is they oftentimes need to be reminded more than they need to be instructed. And when we go back to instructing them, it makes them feel like they're not doing a great job, that they're not focused on the same collective results. And they might leave because they don't feel fulfilled. And so we talk about over communicating clarity. Hey, why do we exist? How do we behave? This is creating a culture. It allows people to buy into a culture. And I heard a CEO say, culture exists whether you define it or not. And if we take the time to define it and the time to communicate it, then we can start to hire people that align with our culture, hire people that align with our goals and our behaviors. And so that leads us to the fourth discipline of organizational health, which is reinforce clarity. And reinforcing clarity is really, how do we take this that we just talked about and build it into our human systems? So how do we hire people? Most people hire for proficiency and fire for behavior, right? Hey, this person is really good, but then they came to the team and they were pretty corrosive, and then we fire. We would say hire for behavior. Proficiency is a permission to play. Like, of course you can't just hire someone to be a doctor or a pilot because they're a great person and align with your values, but definitely take the time to find someone who does align with your values. So it's, how do we hire? How do we reward? How do we manage people? Mm-hmm. We can manage people, hold them accountable to our clarity. Hey, you're not making decisions with how we will succeed. You're not aligned with our behaviors. That's a behavioral accountability, not a punitive, you didn't do your job accountability. And then the last one is, how do we run our meetings? We have a really prescriptive approach to meetings because we believe that all this exists, these disciplines exist and are exercised in meetings. And we believe that meetings are game time. For leaders, everything else you do in the middle of the week is practice. Your meeting should be super engaging talking about the right thing, making better decisions faster, people advocating for what they like, listening, arguing like they're right, but listening like they're wrong, and coming to a conclusion. And so we would say if leaders and teams could master these 4 disciplines, they would see an incredible return on the smart side of their business as well.
Well, I'm sold.
Are you?
Yes.
Great. Well, I know you are, but part of it is, it is a shift from traditional leadership, and one of the things that really inspires me to do this work is, I don't know, Pat founded this company because when he was a kid, his dad would come home like really unhappy from work, and his dad would say, complain about this thing called management. And Patrick was like, when I grow up, I'm going to fix management. and so that dads can go home to their families and be energized and loving and all of that. And so that, I really do believe these organizations, people go home happy, they go home more fulfilled, and they're getting a lot done.
Totally. I think that was one of the things that sold me, or kind of made me latch on to want to know more about the Table Group. Is I had a similar experience growing up as big corporate. My parents worked for huge corporation, come home, and it just, all they would do is complain about work. And I was just like, so scared to enter the workforce after college, because I was like, I'm literally signing up to be miserable my whole life.
Yeah.
And then kind of got to a point where I was like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. There's a way around this. So I love that. Well, that was just jam-packed with nugget after nugget of gold. Thank you so much for enlightening us, quizzing me, putting me on the spot. I liked that. Thank you. And yeah, that was so great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Before we sign off, for all my loyal listeners out there, that I'm a Patrick Lencioni fan. Obviously, we've gone over this, but one of my favorite things about his podcast is he kind of does fake sponsorships. They're not sponsored, and big shocker, neither am I. And so just use this moment to sponsor some of our favorite items. So Casey, I'm going to let you go first. I don't know what you're going to sponsor.
Is it an item? Does it have to be an item?
No, it can be anything. Okay. It doesn't have to be an item. It can be something tangible or an idea, something not tangible, whatever.
So I would like to take a few minutes, or a few seconds rather, to sponsor, advertise, whatever, for golf in general. Oh, yes. It's a game that challenges you, like, internally. It's a game you can play with friends. It's a game you can play till you're 80 years old, 90 years old, and one that I feel like you can build a lot of camaraderie around. And I know we talked about this, but I really enjoyed the game of golf, and I've been playing since I was a kid, and I think it's a great skill for people to learn, and a challenging one.
Yeah, it's for sure. It's definitely mentally challenging. I have not been playing golf since I was a kid, but as a lifelong softball player, now retired as an adult, I needed something to pick up. And so my husband's a big golfer, and I've caught the bug, and I'm like, can we go to the driving range? He's like, can we eat dinner? I'm like, what if we went to the driving range? It's like, maybe after dinner. So I get it. I get that. I'm going to sponsor something that I might get some heat for. My husband called me a psychopath the other day for giving all my love to this. I'm going to sponsor oatmeal raisin cookies. I might be the outlier, but I think they are so great. And if you find a good one, there's really nothing like it. And I honestly think it's the only cookie that you could eat for breakfast and not feel bad about it. And I think that's a huge plus.
Who has the best raisin oatmeal cookie in Salt Lake?
I don't know. I haven't had them. I'm a huge oatmeal cream pie fan. Okay. And there's this like it's vegan bakery on 9th South in State or something over there, over by Normal Ice Cream. Shout out to Normal, big Normal fan. Over by Liberty Park, it's like a vegan bakery, and they make the best oatmeal cream pie, even though it's vegan. No hate to vegans, but
I will try it out.
Yeah, it's great. My husband, I said, I think oatmeal cream pies or oatmeal raisin cookies are my favorite. And he called me a psychopath, but whatever. I don't care.
Unpopular opinion. I like vanilla ice cream. Very unpopular opinion as well, because there's so many flavors, but it's just so good.
It's classic.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. One last question. If any leader or manager or anyone out there is watching this podcast and is like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to this guy, how would they best get a hold of you?
That's a great question. I wasn't prepared.
Is that something you can divulge, or is it like, find me on LinkedIn?
Yeah. No, it's a very strict process. No, if you go on the Table Group website, there's a section under consulting, and you can see all 40 of us consultants and see where we're at. I'm based in Salt Lake City, and that's intentional. I really love this spot. But there are consultants throughout the United States who can serve your team. And I really believe that this is some of the most important work that leaders can do. And there's a lot more information about what we just shared today, and even more information. We are classic give away the business. So if you guys want more materials or PDFs or exercises you can run through your team, go to the Table Group website. My name's Casey Thompson. I'm local, casey.thompson@Table Group Consulting. If you want to send me an email, I'm happy to have any conversation that you'd like to have.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Casey. That was just chock full of just awesome information. And I'm so happy that you got on the podcast. And I know it probably blessed our listeners, and I just can't wait to keep digging in more. So thank you so much.
Of course, we're going to hit the range soon. So
that's right. I can't wait. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. All right, everyone. Have a safe. Oh man, I'm going to cut that one out.